Super teams have always been the foundation of NBA basketball. From the very beginning, the teams that are equipped with the most star-studded players usually come out on top and compete for the championship year after year. Some big threes form naturally through the draft, and they tend to be more successful in the long run, while other big threes form out of nowhere. Sometimes three-star players just decide, hey, let's team up and do this. How's it going, folks? My name's Andy, and today we're gonna talk about big threes throughout NBA history. Here are, in my opinion, the 7 most disappointing ones. By the way, I'll try to stick with just big threes, so no big fours or big fives or anything like that. But before we start, this video is sponsored by Otis. Otis is the stock market for culture. They have a website and an app where you can buy and sell shares of culturally relevant pieces. Weekly available drops include a mix of contemporary, collectors, and pop culture items. For example, recently this Kevin Durant rookie card has been put on the market, with investors already jumping in. They've got basketball cards, shoes, posters, old games, and even Pokemon cards too. Personally, I like the shoes they got up there. These exclusive Kobe sneakers caught my attention, and the original 1985 Air Jordan 1s, for all you sneakerheads out there. You can buy and sell shares of these items as investments, with the chance to co-own rare collector's items. Sign up for Otis with the link in my description, and get your first share for free when you fund your account. Number 7. Kevin Garnett, Sam Cassell, and Latrell Sprewell. In the 2003 offseason, a frustrated Kevin Garnett had been carrying the Wolves franchise on his back for many years. But for 7 consecutive seasons, the Wolves failed to win a single playoff series. They got knocked out in the first round year after year, and a 27-year-old KG has yet to see the second round. That would change. In the 2004 playoffs, the Wolves made a massive push to the title, acquiring Sam Cassell and Latrell Sprewell. It was the first time of KG's career where he got some legitimate help, and the results were initially a success. In the trio's first year together, they won 58 games, securing the best record in the Western Conference. This was also the same year the Lakers formed their own Big Four, and despite their own disappointment in the finals, they still trounced the Wolves. It was a bitter ending to the best season of KG's career up until that point, and to make matters worse, they failed to run it back. The following season was atrocious, as Sam Cassell struggled with injuries and Sprewell fell off hard. The Wolves missed the playoffs in 2005, and this big three was never seen again. Number 6. Hakeem Olajuwon, Clyde Drexler, and Charles Barkley. By 1996, Charles Barkley became frustrated with the Phoenix Suns. Despite his incredible accomplishments, there was still one thing missing: a championship. By this time, the Rockets, led by Hakeem and Drexler, also wanted to make one last push to the title, so they kinda blew up their team, traded away some great role players to get Barkley. A young Ori and Cassell were both super valuable pieces in their previous championships just 1 or 2 years ago, so dumping them away for an aging Barkley sparked some discussion and debate. Now, if all 3 of these stars were in their primes, this would be a different story, but they weren't. They were all approaching their mid-30s and clearly past their peak. In the 97 playoffs, they were crushing it until they faced the Jazz. In a tightly competitive Game 6, Stockton hit the game-winning 3 that launched the Jazz into the finals for the first time ever. For Utah, it was the most iconic, most emotional moment in their franchise history. For the Rockets, it was heartbreaking. You could see it in Chuck's eyes that he knew this was his last chance, and to lose like this, it's devastating. Following this defeat, it was indeed his last chance. The Rockets floated in the first round for a couple years after, but couldn't get another real shot at the title. Number 5. Gilbert Arenas, Caron Butler, and Antoine Jamison. In the mid-2000s, the Washington Wizards, believe it or not, had a really good trio, a team with immense firepower and high expectations that were never fulfilled. In the 2006-07 season, they had the highest scoring trio in the league. Arenas, Butler, and Jamison combined to average over 67 points per game, along with the fourth best offensive efficiency in the entire league. That's freaking crazy, especially for a team that's barely won half their games. While the Wizards were an offensive powerhouse, defensively they were absolutely putrid, always ranking near the bottom. As someone who's a huge fan of Arenas, his style of play was just so fun to watch. He was pulling up from 30 feet out before Steph Curry made it popular. He had the flash, the flair, and the finesse to truly become an NBA megastar. For a short time, I'd say he was, but injuries, knee problems, and, pulling out a gun in the locker room, those are things that you do not want to see happen. His career plummeted, and sadly, those Wizards teams have largely been forgotten. Nowadays, they're only recognized as LeBron's first playoff rivals. Number 4, Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, and James Harden. I was debating on whether or not to put this trio on the list. On one hand, they reached the finals at the ages of 22 and 23. That's already better than every other trio on this list, so I wouldn't say it's a disappointment. On the other hand, because they were so good, they had so many missed opportunities. They had so much untapped potential, so many high expectations that were never lived up to, simply because Harden got traded. Maybe he wouldn't have turned into the same player if they all stayed together, or maybe the luxury tax was too detrimental for a small market team to handle if all three of them got paid. Either way, this young trio is certainly the biggest missed opportunity in NBA history. To break them up right after reaching the finals, it's pretty damning. Number 3, Carmelo Anthony, Amar'e Stoudemire, and Tyson Chandler. At the 2011 trade deadline, the Knicks were doing quite well. Stoudemire was a top 5 MVP candidate. The Knicks surrounded him with a solid supporting cast, and for the first time in forever, Knicks fans actually had hope. The future was looking bright. Then Melo came, for better or worse. Now, I'm a huge fan of Melo. I know what he brought to New York, and I know he did lead them to their best season since 1999. However, the Knicks trading what seems like their entire supporting cast to get Melo in the first place, that was the killer. Guys like Wilson Chandler, Danilo Gallinari, Raymond Felton, who actually came back later, and even Timofey Mozgov. They were all crucial to the team's success. To give them all up when Melo could have easily signed with the Knicks as a free agent during the summer, it was not ideal. The rest of the 2010-11 season was a disaster. They lost the same flair they had when Stoudemire was leading the team. We all knew defensively they'd be terrible, but offensively they somehow looked even worse. Melo and Amar'e had zero chemistry. A few months later, in the offseason, they signed Tyson Chandler to help with their defensive problems, which he did. The Knicks had one good run in the 2013 playoffs, where they won 54 games and reached the semifinals. But that was it. Through a combination of injuries and an aging core of players, they seriously lacked any sort of identity. It seems like 80% of their game plan was to pass the ball to Melo and watch him do something. It didn't work in Denver, and it didn't work any better in New York. Despite their championship aspirations, in 3 seasons, this Big Three achieved nothing but a second-round exit. Number 2, Anthony Davis, DeMarcus Cousins, and Jrue Holiday. When you pair arguably the 2 best big men in the league at the time, plus an all-star caliber point guard like Jrue Holiday, you expect some nasty results. And they were nasty, just not the nasty you're thinking of. In the short time they played together, this Davis-Cousins frontcourt, nicknamed Icy Hot, due to Cousins' hot-tempered persona paired with Davis and his cool demeanor, they struggled to play together. In the 2017-18 season, they were better when only one of them was on the floor while the other sat on the bench. If they were on the floor together, there were diminishing results. It was quite evident after Cousins tore his Achilles halfway through the season. The Pelicans played better without him, finishing the season with 48 wins and reaching the second round of the playoffs. At that point, it was the furthest Davis has ever gone. It was that moment when the Pelicans realized they don't need Cousins, hence why they did not re-sign him. Plus, having a severe Achilles injury, it's pretty hard for players to recover. Had he not suffered that, they might have still been together. Realistically, the only reason this super team existed was because the Pelicans wanted to make one last effort to keep Davis in New Orleans. But it didn't work, and they blew up the team a year later. Finally, at number 1, Russell Westbrook, Paul George, and Carmelo Anthony. The big three that was supposed to compete with the Warriors and Rockets in the Western Conference. The big three that should have been the best team OKC has ever had. Well, it turns out they got manhandled by Donovan Mitchell, a rookie. The addition of Melo was supposed to be the final piece to push them over the top. The guy who's supposed to play off of Westbrook and George to take the pressure off of them because they needed a third option. Looking back, I can't believe people even expected a washed-up Melo to help them in any way. OKC's game plan was essentially to just throw the ball to one of their stars and let them ISO. I guess that's been OKC's thing for a while. Melo was simply not good enough anymore. Overall, this post-Durant era with Westbrook drastically underachieved. This Melo experiment only lasted for one season, where they won 48 games and lost in the first round, as usual. Over the years, regardless of the star players they added, they couldn't get out of the first round. Definitely the most disappointing super team we've seen in recent history. Anyway, that's all folks. Those were 7 of the most disappointing trios in NBA history. The expectations were sky high, but the performance was low. Let me know in the comment section of any other big threes you can think of that severely underperformed. Which ones got so much hype, yet nothing to show for it? Thank you all so much for watching, I hope y'all enjoyed the video, and as always, I'll see you next time. Peace.